17-year-old Kemberly Ramer had a bright future ahead of her. A talented softball player and a dedicated student, she was known for her infectious smile and her dreams of becoming a physical therapist. Living in the quiet town of Opp, Alabama, Kemberly was surrounded by a close-knit family and a community that adored her. But on a warm summer night in August 1997, everything changed. Kemberly disappeared from her own bedroom, vanishing without a trace. Her belongings, her purse, glasses, and even her shoes were left behind, painting a haunting picture of a young girl abruptly taken from the life she loved. For her family, it was the beginning of a nightmare that has lasted nearly 3 decades. Despite exhaustive searches, countless interviews, and the involvement of federal investigators, the mystery of Kemberly's disappearance remains unsolved. How could a vibrant, promising young girl simply disappear from her own home? What happened in the darkness of that fateful night? And why has no one come forward with the answers her family so desperately needs? This is the story of Kemberly Ramer, a chilling mystery that continues to haunt her loved ones and her community 27 years later. Kemberly Ramer, affectionately known as Kem by her loved ones, was the kind of person everyone admired. Born on May 18, 1980, in Opp, Alabama, she grew up as a lively, outgoing teenager with an infectious smile that could light up any room. As a cheerleader and a member of the girls' softball team, Kemberly was not just active in her school community, but also a role model for her peers. Her friends described her as warm-hearted, approachable, and brimming with ambition. Despite her parents' divorce, Kemberly's family life remained stable and loving. Her father, Kenneth, lived in Opp, where she resided, while her mother, Sue, and her older sister, Kirsten, lived just across the state line in Florida. Even though they were separated by distance, the family maintained a close bond, supporting Kemberly in her academic and extracurricular pursuits. Her father often cheered her on at her softball games, and her mother encouraged her to chase her dreams. Kemberly had big plans for her future. As a senior in high school, she was eagerly looking forward to her final year and had already started planning her next steps. Her goal was to study physical therapy at the University of South Alabama, a profession she believed would allow her to help others while pursuing her passion for health and wellness. Her optimism about the future was infectious, and she inspired those around her to dream big as well. Kemberly wasn't just a student or an athlete. She was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Her absence has left a void in the lives of those who knew her, and the memories of her laughter and determination remain etched in their hearts. To understand the tragedy of her disappearance, one must first appreciate the light she brought to the world. August 15, 1997, was an ordinary summer evening in the small town of Opp, Alabama, a town where doors were often left unlocked and the sense of safety was almost taken for granted. For 17-year-old Kemberly Ramer, it was a day filled with normal activities and teenage excitement. She had just taken her senior year photos and was eager to embrace her final year of high school. That evening, she played a softball game with her team and later went out with friends, enjoying the last days of summer before the school year began. As the night unfolded, Kemberly ended her evening by visiting her boyfriend, a young man she had been dating for only a couple of weeks. Shortly before midnight, she returned to her father's house, where she lived, parking her car in the driveway. Her father, Kenneth, was out of town that night, leaving Kemberly home alone. She had plans to wake up early the next morning to visit her school and pick her parking space for the upcoming year, a small but exciting milestone for a high school senior. What happened after Kemberly stepped into the house remains a mystery. The next morning, her father returned home to find the house empty. At first, he assumed Kemberly might be out with her mother or friends, but as hours turned into a full day with no sign of her, concern turned into panic. When her parents realized no one had seen or heard from her since the previous night, they called the police. Inside the house, investigators found unsettling clues. Kemberly's room bore signs of a struggle. Her pillow lay on the floor, A picture had fallen off the wall, and her personal belongings, including her purse, glasses, keys, and even her shoes, were still in her room. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, taken abruptly from the safety of her own home. There were no signs of forced entry, but the disarray suggested something had gone terribly wrong. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual that night, and the quiet streets of Op yielded no immediate leads. As the first 48 hours, the most critical window in any missing person case, ticked away, the search for Kemberly intensified. But even as her loved ones and law enforcement scoured the area, the chilling reality of her disappearance began to settle in. Kemberly was gone, and the answers to what happened to her that night remained frustratingly out of reach. The initial response to Kemberly Ramer's disappearance was swift, but fraught with urgency. By the time law enforcement became involved, over 36 critical hours had passed since she was last seen. Her parents, consumed with fear, could only provide what little information they had. Kemberly had come home after midnight and was believed to have gone to bed. Beyond that, the circumstances surrounding her disappearance were a mystery. Police began by examining the house for evidence. The disarray in Kemberly's room suggested a struggle had taken place. Her pillow lay on the floor, a picture had fallen from the wall, and her shoes, purse, glasses, and keys were all left behind. These details led investigators to believe Kemberly had been forcibly taken from her room sometime after midnight. There were no signs of forced entry, which raised chilling questions. Did Kemberly know her abductor, or had they entered the house quietly and taken her by surprise? Recognizing the severity of the case, local authorities called in the FBI for assistance. With their expertise and resources, the FBI launched a full-scale investigation. Search teams combed through nearby wooded areas and bodies of water, while flyers bearing Kemberly's face were distributed throughout the region. Yet, despite their efforts, no significant leads emerged in those early days. Attention soon turned to potential suspects. One name that quickly surfaced was Jeremy Anderson, a 27-year-old man who had been dating Kemberly's older sister, Kirsten. Jeremy had access to the house, as he possessed a spare key, and reports suggested that Kemberly was uncomfortable around him. However, she never disclosed why. Investigators uncovered further suspicious behavior. On the morning after Kemberly's disappearance, Jeremy reportedly appeared at a friend's house in a panic, asking for help to dispose of a borrowed truck. The vehicle was later found abandoned at a church and had been meticulously cleaned. Jeremy, the son of a retired detective, refused to cooperate with law enforcement or take a polygraph test. Despite these red flags, there wasn't enough concrete evidence to charge him. As days turned into weeks, investigators also explored other theories, including potential links to Florida, where suspicious phone calls had been made from Kemberly's house on the night she vanished. The calls could not be definitively traced, but they hinted that her abductor may have crossed state lines. With no solid evidence and limited cooperation from key individuals, the investigation hit numerous roadblocks. The lack of a clear suspect or motive left Kemberly's family and the community in limbo, haunted by the unanswered question: who took Kemberly and why? The search for Kemberly Ramer began with urgency and hope, but as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into years, the case became a frustrating journey filled with challenges and dead ends. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement, volunteers, and Kemberly's family, every promising lead seemed to dissolve into nothingness, leaving those who loved her desperate for answers. One of the first major efforts involved a search of a pond in Florida, about 50 kilometers from Kemberly's home in Op, Alabama. Acting on a tip that suggested her body may have been dumped there, the FBI brought in cadaver dogs that seemed to detect human remains. However, the pond's tannic waters were so dark that divers had to feel their way around, using metal detectors in hopes of finding traces of the gold bracelet and anklet Kemberly had been wearing. After 3 days of meticulous searching, the effort yielded no results. Years later, attention shifted to a sinkhole near Ponce de Leon, Florida, based on another tip. The sinkhole, 16 meters deep and 91 meters in diameter, was a challenging site to search. FBI divers spent over 35 hours in the water, battling near-zero visibility to examine every crevice. Despite their best efforts, the search once again came up empty. These dead ends were devastating, not only for the investigators, but also for Kemberly's family, who clung to every tip as a glimmer of hope. In 2015, a new lead directed authorities to an abandoned house in Coffee County, Alabama. It was believed that Kemberly's body might be buried in an old well on the property. Investigators used heavy equipment to dig over 9 meters into the ground, but the search produced no evidence linking the site to Kemberly. Each failed search took an emotional toll on Kemberly's family. Her mother, Sue, spent countless weekends exploring wooded areas, hoping to find any trace of her daughter. Her father, Kenneth, passed away without ever knowing what happened to his beloved daughter. The repeated disappointments left the family in a perpetual state of grief, balancing moments of hope with the crushing reality of unanswered questions. Despite these challenges, Kemberly's loved ones have never given up. Every tip, no matter how small, is treated as a potential breakthrough. Yet, as the years continue to pass, the frustration of not knowing remains a heavy burden, and the case lingers in the hearts of those who refuse to forget her. Kemberly Ramer's disappearance sent shockwaves through the quiet, close-knit town of Opp, Alabama. Known for its friendly atmosphere and safe neighborhoods, Opp was a place where families felt secure, children played freely, and doors were rarely locked. But the sudden and unexplained vanishing of a vibrant 17-year-old shattered that sense of safety, leaving the community in a state of fear and disbelief. For days, volunteers from all corners of Opp rallied to help in the search for Kemberly. Local residents combed wooded areas, posted missing person flyers in storefronts, and shared information with law enforcement. Truckers passing through the area displayed flyers in other states, hoping to spread the word far and wide. The entire town came together, united by the hope of bringing Kemberly home. However, as weeks turned into months without answers, fear began to take hold. Parents grew more protective of their children, and locking doors became a nightly routine in a town where such precautions were once unnecessary. Conversations in grocery stores and church gatherings often turned to speculation about what happened to Kemberly and whether the person responsible might still be among them. The impact was especially profound on Kemberly's classmates and friends, who started the school year with an empty seat where she should have been. The thought that someone could simply vanish without a trace created an air of unease that lingered for years. Although the case remained unsolved, the community never forgot Kemberly. Fundraisers were held to support the family and raise rewards for information. Vigils were organized to honor her memory and to remind everyone that the search for justice was not over. Her disappearance became a haunting chapter in Opp's history, a chilling reminder that even the safest towns are not immune to tragedy. For Kemberly Ramer's family, the pain of her disappearance has been a relentless and unyielding burden. In the years since that fateful August night, her parents, Kenneth and Sue, have carried the weight of unanswered questions, clinging to hope even as the passage of time has brought more heartbreak than resolution. Kemberly's father, Kenneth, was deeply involved in the early efforts to find his daughter, working tirelessly with law enforcement and the community. He passed away several years ago, never knowing what happened to his beloved daughter. His loss added another layer of grief to an already shattered family. Sue, Kemberly's mother, has been the pillar of strength for the family, refusing to give up on the search for answers. For years, she spent every weekend exploring wooded areas and abandoned properties, following even the faintest tips that might lead her to her daughter. In interviews, Sue has often expressed how deeply she misses Kemberly. "If I could tell her something today," she once said, "I'd tell her I love her very much, and we wish this had never happened. We just want to bring her home." Kemberly's older sister, Kirsten, has also struggled to cope with the loss. The guilt and pain of losing a sibling under such mysterious circumstances have left a lasting scar. She, like her mother, holds on to the hope that someday the truth will emerge. To keep Kemberly's memory alive, the family has participated in vigils, distributed updated missing person flyers, and spoken to media outlets about her case. They've also raised funds to support searches and offer rewards for information. For them, every small effort is a way to ensure that Kemberly is not forgotten and that the fight for justice continues. After nearly 3 decades, the disappearance of Kemberly Ramer remains one of Alabama's most haunting mysteries. Despite countless searches, numerous interviews, and the involvement of the FBI, the case is no closer to being solved than it was in 1997. Investigators continue to treat her disappearance as an active case, but they lack the evidence needed to bring closure to her grieving family. Over the years, law enforcement has pursued hundreds of leads, from tips about suspicious activity to detailed theories about what might have happened that night. They have questioned multiple persons of interest, including Jeremy Anderson, who still remains under a shadow of suspicion due to his uncooperative behavior and unexplained actions following Kemberly's disappearance. However, without concrete evidence or a confession, no arrests have been made. The FBI has reiterated that they believe individuals in the OP area may have critical information about what happened to Kemberly. In their appeals to the public, investigators stress that even seemingly insignificant details could be the missing piece needed to solve the case. Yet, despite these efforts, the case has grown cold, leaving behind only speculation and unanswered questions. For Kemberly's family, every passing day is a cruel reminder of the life she never got to live. Her mother, Sue, now in her 70s, has expressed her heartbreak in interviews, saying, "She would be 43 today, likely with a family of her own. I think about her every day. I just want answers, anything to finally bring her peace." The family's resilience is a testament to their enduring love for Kemberly, but the lack of closure remains a source of deep pain. What happened to Kemberly Ramer on that warm August night in 1997? Was she taken by someone she knew, or was it a stranger who invaded her home under the cover of darkness? Is there someone out there still holding the truth about her fate? These chilling questions continue to haunt her family, her community, and anyone who has followed her story. Kemberly's case serves as a sobering reminder of the fragility of safety and the importance of justice. Perhaps someone, somewhere, holds the key to unlocking this mystery. If you have any information about Kemberly Ramer's disappearance, no matter how small, now is the time to come forward. Justice for Kemberly and peace for her family depends on it.